Thank you so much, Tony, and to John, thank you so much, and to each and every one of you for being here on this very special occasion. It's my first time being in Delaware. I've transited through Delaware on this cellar plenty of times, but for this old Southern boy to be in the first state to ratify his Constitution, that means a whole lot to me. So thank you. First of all, you know, we talk about recognizing those that sometimes we believe are the least amongst us. We need to give recognition to the staff of this incredible banquet hall for all they have done. Okay. How many people here remember that movie Tombstone? Okay. Ain't this a daisy? I feel like Doc Holliday in the Oriental Saloon after Johnny Ringo went through the little twirly gun thing, okay? That was Johnny Ringo. And now I got to stand up here with my little whiskey cup and try to keep y'all going for the last few minutes. So I appreciate what you just did to me, Rabbi. Because the bottom line is, down south where we're from, the only thing I need to come up to do is say is pass the plate around, because we should be going home. But I want to take just a few moments and look, like I said, I was born in Georgia, so we're just pretty simple people. And what I won't have to say is right here. But I think it's important what I want to convey to you. Because I want to talk about the man who was first for this nation. Just the same as Delaware was first, I want to talk about our first general. I want to talk about our first president. And I want to leave with you 4 quotes that I believe are so prescient for what George Washington would have us to hear tonight. The first quote is this: "The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and centuries has perpetuated the most horrid enormities, in itself is frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual. And sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty." That was George Washington in his farewell address. What George Washington was basically saying to us then, as he is saying to us now, is that the United States of America was never about political faction. The United States of America was never about political parties. The United States of America was about simple principles. The principles that were laid out in our Declaration of Independence. The principles that were laid out in the Federalist Papers. The principles that were laid out in the United States Constitution, which your state was first to ratify. But what do we see happening in this America today? We see people that are truly not the greatest amongst us, but more so the lesser, that are now being elevated for their own personal purposes. We see factions that are arising and using their ideological differences, using their own self-centered, self-gratitude to try to now have more control over us and to lose our public liberty.
Right.
Think about how interesting it is that now we're sitting in an America where the federal government has to give us approval to walk in a park. Think about how interesting it is that a federal government can put up borders and boundaries and barricades to a memorial to the greatest generation, which, as you said, made it possible for us to be here today. Think about where we have come in the United States of America, where it is not about individuals that, as Washington did, as you have on your program, kneeling in the snow of Valley Forge so that he could pray to cross the Delaware River and bring victory for us at the Battle of Trenton. But instead, we have a cult of personality We have an American president that in Washington Post receives Pinocchios. I don't understand why a president would receive Pinocchios. Because I thought that a president was supposed to uphold the highest standards of character and the highest standards of integrity. But as it says here, sometimes it turns to the disposition of the purpose of their own elevation. America, wake up and remember these words from our first George Washington. The second quote, we are either a united people or we are not. If the former, let us in all matters of general concern act as a nation, which have natural objects to promote and a national character to support. If we are not, let us no longer act a farce by pretending to it. That was written to James Madison the 30th of November 1785. I ask you this simple question. What makes us Americans? What is our national character? What are the national objects that we should elevate? What are the things that are so inherent to us that we are supposed to pass on to the next generation? Because we're losing that sense. And I believe right now, if we continue down the path of allowing charlatans and imposters to be elevated to positions of leadership in this great nation, then one day we will not have a great nation. We will not have national objects. The pastor, the rabbi talked about not being able to pray. The day will come when you will not be able to pledge allegiance to the flag. They're already telling you should not be able to say under God. The day will come when we will not sing the national anthem. As a matter of fact, it was Lady Gaga. You all know how she made an aberration of our national anthem. This is the land of the free because it's the home of the brave. And for any person to believe that they can take those words and pervert them, then we're starting to not have national objects that we revere. We're losing our natural national character, a character that is rooted in a rugged individualism. See, I think about America when we started to expand westward. When we went across the great Mississippi River, I don't think that anyone turned around and said, who's going to build a bridge for us? I don't think anyone looked around and said, where's my sugar? Where's my flour? Who's going to feed me? Where's my EBT card? Our national character is one of liberty. It is one of freedom. It is one of faith. It is one of family. It is one of hard work. It is all of those things that Faith and Freedom Coalition stand for. But if we're not talking about it, and God knows our children aren't learning about it in our schools, because I can bet you that Common Core is not going to teach them about our national character. But most importantly, it's about personal responsibility. The rabbi came up here and gave a great sermon. But the root of Christianity is individual salvation. The root of Christianity is your personal responsibility for your soul. But if you forget that that is also the root of this great constitutional republic, is the individual, their rights, their freedom, and their personal responsibility, then we will replace the individual with the collective. And that is the direction that we're heading on right now. Ask yourself as you depart here tonight, what are our national objects to promote and secure? What is our national character? And when was the last time you sat down with your children and your grandchildren about our national character? Character, what they teach in the military, is very simple. It means doing what is right when no one is watching. No morn ever dawned more favorable than ours, and no day was ever more clouded than the present. Wisdom and good examples are necessary at this time to rescue the political machine from the impending storm. George Washington, 5 November 1786. I just came from Washington, D.C., and if you don't believe that there's an impending storm in this country, then you're not paying attention to what is going on. If we don't start looking for wisdom, if we don't start looking for good examples, we're going to lose this great nation. If we don't understand that right now people are picking and choosing the winners and losers in everyday life, in our private sector, in our public sector, we're going to lose this great nation. It was back in the 1830s that Alexis de Tocqueville, a young Frenchman, traveled this great nation. And he wrote a book called Democracy in America. And one of his great quotes is that America is great because America is good. America will cease to be great when America is no longer good. That's the path that we are on right now. It was also de Tocqueville that said, freedom regards religion as the companion in all its battles and all its triumphs, as the very cradle of its infancy and the source of all its claims, because religion alone is the safeguard of morality, and morality is the best and surest pledge for the survival of freedom. If we do not stand up, you've heard people talk about the shining city that sits upon a hill. You've heard people tonight talk about the beacon of liberty, freedom, and democracy that the United States of America is. But how many of you remember that great commercial from Ronald Reagan when he talked about his morning in America? That sense of hope, that sense of a new day. If we're not careful, America will go into a new darkness because we have forgotten what it means to have that dawn. We have forgotten what it means to have that morning. We have forgotten what it means to have wise men that will stand up. You know, one of the great scriptures that I love is when Solomon was speaking with the Lord. And Solomon was told by God, ask whatever you want, I will give it unto you. And all that Solomon asked, not for gold, not for riches, not to conquer his enemies, he asked simply for the wisdom and discernment to lead the people. If we do not have godly wisdom and discernment that is in Washington, D.C., if we do not have men and women that are truly called to lead the United States of America, called to lead states such as Delaware, called to lead cities such as Wilmington and our counties, then we will continue to go down the road of perdition. Right. And we will not have the morning that Ronald Reagan said was possible. I do not believe that the greatest days of the United States of America are done. But I believe now is a time of challenge. I believe now, as Thomas Paine said in December of 1775, that these are indeed the times which try men's soul and women, that the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from his duties. But to those who will make the stand, to those, I hope, that are sitting here tonight, you will gain the love and the admiration of all mankind and your fellow Americans. We need the wisdom to make sure that we secure a new morning, a dawn for this great nation. The last one comes from George Washington's rules of civility and decent behavior. Associate yourself with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation. For 'tis better to be alone than in bad company. Amen. Now down south, this is what mommy and daddy used to say. Folk gonna know you by the company that you keep. So how is it, America? How is it that we elected a person to be our president who was friends with domestic terrorists? Bill Ayers and Bernadette Dorn. How is it, America, that we elected a person to be our president that sat in a church where a minister cursed our country? Now I gotta tell you, I've been to a lot of churches in my life. I can't think of one single pastor that ever cursed this great nation. I had pastors that talked about your soul being cursed if you did not come to Jesus. But I never had a pastor that talked about how ungreat America was. How is it that we allowed that to happen? This is a constitutional republic. And the lessons of a constitutional republic is this. There's two things: the individual and the rule of law. And if you think about what is happening in Washington, D.C. right now, you think about this thing called the Affordable Care Act. I will tell you, the Affordable Care Act is not the law of the land. If the Affordable Care Act was the law of the land, it would apply to every single American. It would apply to every single business. There would be no waivers. There would be no exemptions. There would be no delays. Call your representatives and tell them, we know the company that you're keeping. You're not keeping company with the American people. For you to say that the American people must abide by something that you will not even abide by, that is an aberration of this great constitutional republic. Thank you. In receiving this award, you so humble me, because George Washington was our first leader and probably our greatest leader. But I want you to know one simple thing. America can once again create another George Washington. America can once again rise above all of this foolishness that we see going on. But it's only going to happen if you dedicate yourselves to understanding the fundamental principles and values of this great nation. If you dedicate yourselves to talking to those children and grandchildren, if you dedicate yourselves to get out and talk about the truth, as it said and the rabbi shared with us and I shared with you earlier, one of the most favorite passages of mine is when Joshua took over after Moses had passed away. And God told Joshua one simple thing: be strong and of good courage, for the Lord your God shall never leave you nor forsake you. And if you look later at the end of the book of Joshua in chapter 24, when he is about to pass away, he says one simple thing: as for me and my house, I will serve the Lord. If you are truly serious about why you're here tonight, remember these four simple quotes from our great president, George Washington. Embody them, hold them, make that be part of your spirit, and go outside these doors with courage, with strength, with conviction, with character, with commitment, and do that which is the greatest thing about the United States of America. In 237 years, we have never left less than what was left for the previous generation. That's your challenge. And if you can't do it, think of George Washington and that ragtag bunch of people not far from here at Valley Forge in the dead of winter. Think of George Washington kneeling beside his horse and praying. Think about the victory that they had at Trenton against the greatest army that the world had ever known. And the reason why you are here today, because you're Americans, and we accept nothing less. God bless you all, and thank you.